Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Carmine's Arena, a cultural gourmet of information, if you will, a feast for your mind and soul. And now, without further delay, the man, the myth, the maestro, Carmine Arena.
Greetings and welcome once again to Carmine's Arena, site of contest and conflict, venue for and of resolution. Resolution in terms of focus, remedy, and commitment both yours and mine to the preservation, the propagation, and, of course, the celebration of Western civilization. Last time, in episode 110, I related the absolute necessity of knowing history, most particularly modern world history, from the 20th century to the present, era by era, knowing its era by experimental errors, its histology, tyrannical pathology, and toxology, and historical hysteria of prejudice, from and by apprentice, abetting accomplice, their rampant injustice and impatient, scatterbrained, hasty armistice. All the hideous consequence of stupidity and malice wed to artifice. The squelching of history's once salient place in the educational arena has been a purposeful censoring of reality in order to effect a blind leap forward into the cynicisms of intellectual bondage, a kind of heritage power outage. 'Tis all artificial artifice, 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 vying with the American dream left unredeemed. Last time I carefully pointed out that the book to read was the Black Book of the American Left by the once profoundly leftist and now historically enlightened conservative David Horowitz, who, along with such figures as David Mamet, had awakenings that constitute deeply cognitive resurrections, awakenings that clearly apprehend the artful artifice of Big Brother's slush-mush nanny-state constructs, such as nothing so much as the noisy, comfortless prison of free lunch counter crowds, one herded electorate that has little historic yardstick to measure double-quick the meaning and hot airiness of their power-obsessed leadership. A leadership who repeat and repeat a leftist record they routinely and rigorously would seal, redact, or otherwise morph into fairy tale artifice, the tail endings of which are never happy ones, but historic ones, indeed motoric historic, until the untutored, clueless, regressive electorate is yet again made ready to tarry once more on the pothole-ridden road of social justice, repaved with deceptive box office artifice. Yet unlike art which can and does define the ages, artifice is a clever expedient of the merely talented lip-sync trickster. Sly, crafty, usually popular because hyped until the performer becomes an industry too big to fail. Which reminds me, at another time, we'll chat about tyrants and their pet celebrities and pet tyrants. Each will be ultimately exposed as having had more celebrated talent than innate genius. Ergo, artifice is as far from fine art as truth from political spin, as far as fashion is from style, as far, say, as cuisine is from oven routine. Careful what you swallow. Now, as a classically trained and tried musician and concert pianist, The popular pummeling persistence of Artifice is punishingly painful to yours truly, personally and pragmatically. As an apt example, I've a positively strong aversion to those flimsy plugged-in keyboard synthesizers, a paradox that steps back into the future, much like tin horn tyrants, not to mention my revulsion to the use by questionable yet famous vocalists of the so-called auto-tune app, whose studio absence nonetheless electronically corrects off-pitch wanderings and rhythmic miscalculations and other chemically induced dirty deeds, studio-gummed, drummed, and humbugged for our future ever-dumbed-down listenership mugging. Yes, I'm afraid, taste is as uncommon as is the chaste. We've only a mad haste to one-clad waste, such we should all ne'er but fail to lambaste, but will we? Presently you may well ask why I've gone from the leftist theft of history to a discussion of art versus artifice. And here I thought you'd never ask. My response is that as a lifelong observer, musico-practitioner and teacher, I've emphatically had deep concern for the historic suffering of my fellow artists, genuine artists as opposed to the robotically reproduced variety suffering systematically and systemically, imposed censorship by fearful Philistine governments, each aesthetically anemic and jittery. Those artists of genius who fled and flee early were and are lucky to have escaped their otherwise advertised workers' paradise with social justice their booby prize. Those far less fortunate, left behind sometimes cautiously tolerated, oftentimes scorned, and at all times censored, were thereafter frequently found missing, declared clinically mad, or rendered dead silent. Such is the tyrant's cockeyed concept of said social justice, a phrase that continues to dupe its self-righteous users, hence tyrants left, right, or cleft, like Stalin, Mao Zedong, Hitler, Castro, and all iconoclast clones, want the fine artist to reflect not freedom, art's steady heartbeat and steadier spirit, but the conformity and enormity of their narcissistic aggrandizement orchestrated by group think committee. This corseted, constricted containment gives tyranny away, no matter how artificially benevolent. For genius, creative genius, shall always be held in smug suspicion, because it's untamable and unknowable, ironically unknowable even to itself. If once tamed, it is doomed, doomed to something of popular interest, and only to its moribund second-rate senses, who release resultant artifice to static, populous stupor. Why, as I speak, I'm unexpected and unintentionally reminded of another pet peeve, along with synthesizers, auto-tune, and clever lip-sync fakes like popular politicians who synthesize your desires and auto-tune those desires whilst you sleep. Excuse me. My pet peeve, to which I refer, is rhoticity, spelt R-H-O-T-I-C-I-T-Y, rhoticity. And that briefly is the overboard usage of R's, that is, the letter R, in faux American dialect voiced by pop and rock chanters who, like, as an example, the Beatles, didn't sound like they came from Liverpool, England, except when they spoke. Yet when they sang, they assumed a quasi-African-American vernacular and diction, as if born in the deep South. This sincerely insincere dishonesty, derivative and imitative, is phony, faux, pseudo-genuine artifice. I'm happy to say the Beatles independently gave up this still popular practice among others of this genre. Rhoticity is also known, along with the autotune phenomenon, as the Cher effect. Of course, all artists long for recognition, and well they should, but genius strives for its own, very own singular voice, recognized thereafter and treasured in museums and concert halls when and where its reception and comprehension is pure and unsullied by electronic enhancement, aimed at a mob, not an audience, who looks and sensitively sees, hears, and soon sensitively listens. All humans educated or ever aspiring must endeavor to become, dare I say, dare to become connoisseurs of great art, in order to be able to draw aside the dark veil of good intentions, to reveal the malice underneath and, yes, inside not only others, but ourselves. Great art is an immortal gift from an all-creative God who seeks to inspire us with the bounty and beauty of man's innate genius. It is the likes of Mozart which validates our existence, the likes of Da Vinci, who shapes the invisible, the likes of women, who are the first to kiss their child and teach it love. The rest is urban sprawl, scrawl, and drawl. That is why the genius of America and things genuinely American are like the fine arts to be admired and lovingly bequeathed, as John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail from Paris. Paris, whose culture enticed the likes of Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. To therefore scoff at what was to emerge American exceptionalism is to bellyache about trivial mistakes leftist tipsy cakes come to see as our rightful namesake. I thus invite you to apply your air brakes. Obama, an American apologist, and the likes of Castro and the late Hugo Chavez, are zealots who don't arrive fire-breathing demons. No, not at all. They're here to help. David Horowitz, a converted leftist, asks, do you think for a moment that Castro could carry on those 9-hour speeches about Cuba's glorious socialist achievements if he did not at least half believe his own fantasies? Obama, Horowitz continues, Obama and Castro are socialist missionaries. For that very reason, the evil they do exceeds anything achievable by the tin-horn tyrants they become. They are advocates of a cause that turns a blind eye towards the millions of corpses and the wrecked continents of the recent past, while attacking the democratic foundations of what remains of a free market, free world community of nations, beginning with that democracy, Israel, and our democracy, the United States of America. That is their evil and their crime. Their will to do it all over again, as if the human calamities they inspired never took place. But history, like God, shall not perish from the girth of Obama and his leftists' hordes. Why, American triumphalism shall afford him Secret Service protection even after leaving the office, his oath, his very own oath, disparaged. Yes, I told you, God has a great sense of humor. Freedom, yes, freedom shall will out, from our forefathers' genius to our enlightened statesmen, unmuddied by the politics of artifice. Dear listener, I see that I have time to quote John Adams' historic letter from Paris to his wife Abigail in America. It reveals from whence we started and to where we aspire. And I quote, "I must study politics and war," said John Adams, "that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics, philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain," unquote. Yes, how you gonna keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris? Yep, and who the deuce can pollywoo a cow? Which reminds me, I think we can all agree that there are times in order to see, yes, in order to see, we must close our eyes. Such then becomes clearer and ever clearer America's utility and raison d'etre. Adam's God's gift to mankind. Those gifts? Why, those gifts consist of art's craving, search, and seizure of detail, precision, and its symmetrical consideration of balance, and dare I say, divine clairvoyance. And as you've heard me say many, many times before, that gift acknowledges that all the arts are to be mindful in aiming to achieve the rank and condition of great music. Art, no matter the glories of painting, sculpture, and literature, discover their respective forms by revealing a quiet pulse, rhythmic impetus, and thematic purposefulness that eventually are all heard as they are thrillingly grasped in heartfelt musical comprehension of eye, ear, and spirit unto our ripe old age. Why, even the breathtaking breath of great architecture is nothing less than frozen music. These skills are to take God's gift into the realms of perfection, Though perfection itself may be just out of reach of our simian fingers, striving ever toward that goal constitutes the body and soul of civilization. A construct foreseen and realized in the cave paintings of our Cro-Magnon prehistoric ancestors, whose primordial brush still caresses and teases our souls awake, to whom it is we are as against the way we are, herded together, to perceive ourselves as do politicians who auto-tune their spin away from the artistry of statescraft and statesmanship and produce synthesized tyrants, one the duplicate of the other. Power, certainly not providence, is their ambition. Love in their mouth is the same as love's meaning from out the mouth of a randy teenager. Creativity should forever be man's prime ambition, as seen by John Adams, or for that matter, in A Carpenter's Apprentice. For art dares to make mistakes, yet knows which ones to keep. Such is what is loosely dubbed taste and self-discipline. Come to think of it, what is also loosely dubbed good luck is, along with discipline, the ability to overcome bad luck. Victimhood is not relieved by the ballot box, but by self-determination, with your socks pulled up far enough to take personal stock. Thomas Carlyle said that no great man lives in vain. The history of the world is but the biography of great men and women. And may I add, great people who have stood on the shoulders of their peers. Those select few of Cro-Magnon's matchless painters longed not for things like moxie and divisive mischief, but for the justification to believe themselves special, believe themselves to be human. Till this day, pilgrimage is made to these now protected caves, where individualism found its mother's womb. These paintings are signed with the outline of a human hand, that hand, the cradle of civilization. Even when it is that you wish to find your lost self, wend your way alone to a great museum. Don't wander about as if window shopping, but choose in advance a renowned work in the museum's holdings. Stand before it and focus with loving commitment. I promise each time you return over the years, you'll interpret both it and yourself with a child's visionary keenness, that keenness unspoken, but God-begotten, drenched in history and mystery, unfolding in whispering galleries, which witchery makes mockery of all man's duplicity and forgeries. Ultimately, love of great art spawns a contempt for small art and smaller minds. One of the small arts is politics, whose only achievement is to make truth into a liar. Realities seem haywired. Freedom stayed behind barbed wire. Therefore, art required is an umpire. Art requires an umpire quite painful for leftist choirs who don't care to keep score. That is to say, historic scores, recorded further and evermore in archives meant to remain academically alive and properly squired. To quote Rebecca West, that is, Dame Rebecca West, there is no logical reason why the camel of great art should pass through the needle of mob intelligence. However, the camel of left-wing mob hysteria has already poked its dirty nose into the American tent, where it sniffs racism, where it sniffs sexism, where it sniffs homophobia, and feels nostalgia for anti-Semitic Arabia and its sandy cornucopia of anti-Semitism, impatient for our becoming irreparably divided and fratricided. Camels. We used to smoke the damn things. Until next time, look for the rainbow by enjoying true art's afterglow. Lose the borrowed, overgrown artifice of sorrow, and keep the faith God bestowed.
If you have any comments or other remarks, and that I perhaps could even read on some of these broadcasts, please do not hesitate to write to me, Carmine Arena, P.O. Box 1029, Larchmont, New York 10538.